It's almost a cliche at this point. Vancouver is a rainy city. We get about 161 days of the stuff every year. We're technically in the rainforest, and we sell umbrellas as souvenirs.
Like, we get it. So how was it that in 2015, Vancouver had a drought? One where we had to place restrictions on how much water we could use. How does that happen? And more importantly, why might that become more common in the future? And when will I stop asking these rhetorical questions and finally get to the video?
When you turn on your taps at home, water flows out predictably and reliably, which is great. But how we get that water is a bit of a gamble. Our water comes from a place like this, the Coquitlam Reservoir. It's one of 3 lakes where Metro Vancouver stores its drinking water. How did that water get there? Well, I'll show you on a map. Each one of those reservoirs are surrounded by protected watershed lands. All the water that lands here, whether it's rain or snow, runs downhill and collects into the reservoirs. From there, it's filtered and piped down to you. Easy enough, right?
No.
First off, our water doesn't come regularly. Check out this graph of precipitation in Metro Vancouver, and you can see that we basically get a lot of rain and snow in the fall, winter, and spring, but once we hit summer, we barely get any water at all. Second, our reservoirs aren't that big. They hold 290 billion liters of water, which might sound like a lot until you consider that Metro Vancouver uses about 1 to 1.5 billion liters of water every day. So yeah, that's less than a year's worth of drinking water that we can store at any one time.
Vancouver's water supply is basically a feast followed by a famine. So every year we do our best to fill up our reservoirs by the spring and then really hope that it lasts until the fall. It's a delicate and not always predictable system, but for much of our history, we've had one saving grace: snow.
During the winter, snow falls on our mountains and stays there well into the summer. And during the summer, that snow melts and provides a steady stream of water to our reservoirs so that they're still being filled. It's a backup supply of water. So what would happen if we didn't have this snow? Well, that's what happened in 2015. This graph shows the depth of snow near Grouse Mountain for March 1st of every year, and in 2015, that depth was 0. There was no snow at all in the mountains, and the result was a level 4 drought in Metro Vancouver and stage 3 water restrictions, which meant a total ban on watering lawns and washing cars.
Now I want to be clear here. Our water system wasn't a mistake or even flawed from the beginning. It was really designed to work with the annual patterns of snow and rain in our climate. But the reason why I'm concerned is because of 2 things. Our climate is changing, and our need for water is growing.
You might have heard about a little something called climate change. Well, here in Metro Vancouver, studies predict that we'll see a 56% decrease in snow on our mountains by 2050, which won't be fun for snowboarding, but more importantly, that means we'll have much less of that backup supply of water on our mountains. At the same time, Metro Vancouver is expecting another 1 million people by 2050, and they can't all drink kombucha. We're going to need more water.
When it comes to water supply and demand, we're kind of getting squeezed from both sides here. And Metro Vancouver itself predicts that we could see a water supply gap by 2030. What that means is that emergencies like the drought of 2015 won't just be rare events, they'll be the norm. That's a big problem, and addressing that requires big solutions.
We've got a couple options. One is to find other places to get our water from. And Metro Vancouver's website does mention Pitt Lake, Harrison Lake, or even the Fraser River as potential future sources of drinking water. The other option is to increase the amount of water that our current reservoirs can hold by raising the height of the dams creating them.
The challenge with these solutions? Money and environmental impact. Price tags likely in the tens of billions of dollars, and almost certainly harmful effects on salmon and other wildlife.
Right now, we're taking a much smaller step, which is lowering the pipes at Coquitlam Lake to use more of the water there. But even that is going to cost $800 million, which will ultimately be paid by us. Between 2018 and 2023, water service fees in Metro Vancouver are expected to increase by 53%.
Now, there is another way to address this issue. Instead of building all this infrastructure, we could just use less water, right?
It's a fair point. Metro Vancouverites use an average of 444 liters of water per person every day, making us some of the highest consumers of water on the planet. But changing that is a lot less straightforward. A key issue in Metro Vancouver is that we really don't know how much water each household is using in the first place. You know how for your electricity, you have a meter that measures how much electricity you use, and then you get a bill for exactly that amount? Well, that's not the case when it comes to water, because the majority of homes in Metro Vancouver don't have water meters. In the city of Vancouver, 94% of homes don't have them. So instead, most people pay a flat fee and then use as much water as they want for the year. Now, there's a big discussion underway right now about whether Metro Vancouver should require homes to have these water meters, but until that happens, there's not really any financial incentive here for us to use less water.
For me, this is the heart of the issue. Metro Vancouver's water problem isn't really about infrastructure or even climate change and population growth. Most cities around the world are dealing with those same issues. Our unique problem is that we treat our water supply like a buffet.
But, that's just my opinion, and it turns out I'm not 100% right either. I genuinely think that our current meter-free system won't be effective in reducing water consumption, but the evidence is actually proving me wrong right now. Water usage in Metro Vancouver has stayed pretty steady since the year 2000, despite the region adding over 500,000 people, because our average water use per person has gone down. So I want to give credit where credit's due. It seems like a mixture of public awareness campaigns, policies for more water-efficient buildings, and water restrictions in the summer have really gone a long way to reducing our water usage.
So, with that in mind, here's my deep and thoughtful conclusion. Look into buying a low-flush toilet for your home. Try not to wash your car unless it's absolutely necessary, and don't buy a sprinkler. That's about it.